Happy Sunday, guys. It's Yemi, chat box with Yemi Brother Tundi, and here's my guest, the one and only Chris Andrew Boxing. You're good, Chris. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me on. It's lovely to be able to come on and talk to you. How are you,
Yeah.
Yemi? Everything all right?
I'm good. I'm good. As you know, it's been an eventful week of boxing, and yesterday was definitely a fight to remember. What was your thoughts on the fight, first of all? The Lee Wood and Michael Conlan.
It was a terrific affair. I thought Conlan started very, very well. I thought his tactics were spot on. He was making Wood miss, but then when Wood was coming inside and sort of trying to force the fight, Conlan wasn't overawed, and he was finding a lot of space to the body as well, and it was having a real effect on Wood. He was also using a lot of misdirection, feinting as though he was going to come downstairs and instead going upstairs. I thought he was boxing brilliantly for the first 5 rounds. After that, Wood started to come into it a lot more, and I thought the mid rounds were competitive. That could have gone either way, sort of swing rounds. And up until round 10, I thought, Wood had round 8 for sure was his. Conlan, I thought, won round 9, getting on the back foot. So up until round 10, I thought, okay, there's been a sweep early for Conlan. He's got the knockdown too. A couple of those middle rounds could have gone either way. Conlan just needs to see this fight out. But he kept wanting to sort of engage and fight. And while I understood it brought him a lot of success in the middle rounds, he was clearly getting tired, and I wanted to see him tie up a lot more, spoil the fight essentially. Whereas instead what was happening is that he got so tired, and yet he was still throwing punches back. And against a puncher, that's what he wants you to do. He wants to exchange with you. And so in the end, I guess it was just Russian roulette, and he got caught. And yeah, that's how I saw it really. How did you envisage it?
I think, definitely. Definitely. Conlan definitely got a great boxing clinic towards Lee Wood. Unfortunately, I think he just went out of steam. I think he got too good away with test up, and just should have just did more sprinting and just kept in with the jab. And because I think he just tried too hard to get into a scrap, and I think he tied a bit as well on the back rows. I think when he was on the back row, that's when Lee Wood got his game. He was able to hit him the best when he got him against the ropes. I think Collins just played it smart. He was winning the fight and just kept in the distance and kept him in a jab in the center of the ring.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Chris Lloyd was saying post-fight that everything that that Wood was landing, whether it was to the body, to the head, to the shoulders, arms, wherever it was, they were such big thudding shots that they were wearing Conlan down. Do you agree with that? I mean, obviously they were heavy shots, but I still feel that in a way Conlan was willingly going back to the rope. It was like a tactical thing sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
At least that's how I was seeing it. How did you see that personally?
I definitely think it was tactical. With him trying to get into the, I think maybe we were trying to catch him, maybe we were trying to get him with some hooks. Because I think that because usually as you know, Con's not a power puncher, but when he got him in early towards the first one that knockdown, I think that gave him a lot of boost. And felt like he should I think he got carried away with the power and should have focused more on the boxing.
Oh, interesting. So you feel as though he was going he thought, right, I can hurt this guy whenever I want. So he started taking risks.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's possible. That's possible. Do you think in a rematch, how do you think a rematch would go? Do you think he would approach it more intelligently and win it? Or do you think Wood's got his number now?
We have to box it out of boxing. Because clearly Wood's got that knockout power. So we definitely have to outbox him in order to win the rematch.
Definitely one I'd want to see.
Definitely. So with regards to well, I'm thankfully it's good to Collins. It's all good now. I think he did an interview with Boxing Social, asking for the rematch. It was good. It's glad to hear that he's actually he's back and hopefully he's got his full faculties. Because I was worried out there because that knock at the ring, that was wow, that was shocking. That was a mindful. Because I heard people say that he had a faint before he got to the rings. Because I heard people saying that he had like a blackout. He was knocked at the ring, so I wasn't too sure whether they may potentially might be bleeding to the brain that caused him to fall out the ring.
Oh wow, I've not heard that. Yeah, I've not heard that. That's a very worrying development if that's happened. God willing, the guy's all right.
Absolutely, definitely. So definitely fight of the year, and if it was a rematch, then bring it on. If not, do you think going forward, do you reckon Lee Wood is definitely a person who potentially could challenge Leo Santa Cruz and Josh Warrington? Definitely now,
Well, the thing is, he's got the he's a big puncher, so he's always going to, and he's got obviously a lot of heart. He's durable. We've seen that now, because even when he looked like he was wobbling and gone on his feet, he's stuck in there. You know, he was hanging in there. And when you've got that sort of punch and power and that self-belief, and he's got a great team behind him in Ben Davison and Lee Wiley in terms of analytical, so they'll be able to spot the weaknesses of opponents. And if you're a puncher and you are able to capitalize on a weakness and land, you can change the fight at any given moment. He's not going to be the favorite in a lot of those fights. You know, I think Navarrete's definitely got to stay away from. But again, Josh Warrington, you could see overall, he was winning most of the fight against most of the exchanges against a guy like Lara. But Lara was able to land at moments where it changed the course of the fight.
Yeah.
If Lee Wood can become that style of fighter where he starts to punch with a guy like Warrington, who knows what happens, right? So he's riding on the crest of a wave right now. He's got 2 really good back-to-back wins. And he seems like a nice kid too, a likable kid. Nottingham obviously turned out last night. It was a great atmosphere. And they haven't had a star since Carl Froch really retired. So he's there ready to fill those boots. And it makes for an exciting...
The new show of Nottingham, like I said, the new show of Nottingham, absolutely. So definitely it was an entertaining fight. And did you see, regards to Warrington, would Eddie risk Warrington and fighting Lee Wood?
Well, I guess because Wood's with DAZN, I don't know.
Warrington is a big tech seller, so if Warrington get knocked out by Lee Wood, would that risk, Eddie losing a cash cow?
Potentially, but then does Lee Wood step into that mold? It's a big fight. And if Warrington, look, with all due respect to Lee Wood, I think he's doing terrifically well, right? Don't get me wrong. As you can see, I'm very praising of what he's done. But Warrington has operated at a high level. So if he is going to get stopped by the likes of Lee Wood, he might look at it, Eddie, and say, well, look, he's at the twilight of his career anyway. So, now we can build up a new star. If you're looking at it from a sort of Machiavellian perspective, that's how you might look at it. But the fact of the matter is, Eddie's never really been afraid to make some big fights, especially within his own stable. He's willing to risk these guys and then help build them afterwards. I mean, you look at some of the fights that have taken place over the years, you can see that. So yeah, I think he'd be willing to do it if the money's right. You'd have a Leeds versus Nottingham Forest type rivalry as well. So the atmosphere is going to be terrific. Definitely. And also they had. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, that'd be Leeds versus Nottingham. That'd be event to see. And I think Eddie trying to get him at the City Stadium.
Yeah, see, that would be incredible. And the thing is, as well, you've got the way the fans were set up last night. It was segregated. So you had like football, you had home fans, away fans. They weren't mixed in, and I wasn't sure how that would work out in terms of it's going to be crowd trouble. They're going to be trying to get at each other. Now there was crowd trouble. It might have been a lot worse had they been mixed in. So who knows? Maybe they'll need added security. But in terms of an atmosphere, it made it brilliant. And so you can imagine a Leeds versus Nottingham Forest type thing as well. That's going to boost the atmosphere. It's going to be a great spectacle. So yeah, I'd be for it. I'd love to see that fight.
Absolutely. In terms of Mick Collin going forward, do you think that he can become world champion? Definitely, as long as he get over this trauma of losing to Lee Wood. He definitely, because I definitely tonight.
Well, you know what? Actually, you raise an interesting question. I've never thought of that. Up to now, I've been thinking along the lines of, listen, can he overcome this physically? Is there going to be any physical fingerprints of what happened? But you make a good point about this trauma of it. Psychologically, he's a very confident guy. You could see from the way he was walking down to the ring, he had his arms out. He felt like he was there to be crowned last night. Does this take away from that confidence? Because if it does, then he might not be the same fighter anymore. So yeah, there are some question marks there. You raise a good point there. I think mentally he'd be okay. He's got his brother there with him. He's got a good, a really good pedigree. I think he'd find his feet again. He'd understand. But yeah, how he recovers mentally in terms of how he recovers physically, that's another question. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's already asked for a rematch, so see how it goes. See if Eddie will weigh up his option. Eddie will see, is there more money in the Wood Collin rematch, or is there more money in Warrington if he beats Martinez? Because I think that's either going to be the case. It's either going to be Leo Santa Cruz, a rematch with Collin, or a fight with Warrington or Martinez winner.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because he's got so many options now, I guess Lee Wood's team's going to have a big part to play in this as well, because, you know, Wood is riding on the crest of a wave right now. And he might be thinking, listen, I want to strike while the iron's hot. So rather than a rematch, I've done this, I've beaten Conlon, I want to try and extend my legacy further. Because let's say he goes on to fight Warrington and he loses. You could then have a Conlon rematch down the road, even without a belt. And because this fight was so good, people would still want to see it. So I can imagine him wanting to go, do you know what I mean, go for a big star name now. I think that will be the way he goes. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Definitely. Okay, that's our insight into the Lee Wood McCollum. Back to my interest in this interview. I want to know your background in boxing and what made you start your own YouTube channel, because you're one of the YouTubers that I really respect, Chris. You're very insightful, very analytical, very intelligent. You come from a very analytical standpoint. So I want to know where did your passion boxing come from? Where's your background? Were you like what made you start your own YouTube channel?
Oh, firstly, thank you. I'm very flattered to hear that, Yemi. Thanks so much. Well, when I was a little kid, I started martial arts. I started karate. That was the first thing I did as a little kid, just to learn self-defense, really. I was really little. It was a bit of exercise. As I got a bit older, I started doing kickboxing, and I did that for a number of years. Okay. And the gym was a mixed kickboxing gym with a boxing gym. And I played football as well. And it was my dream to become a footballer. So I had quite muscular legs and powerful legs. And so kickboxing was better for me than boxing because, yeah, I could punch a little bit too, but my legs were my best weapon, I guess you could say. So I was sort of practicing more kickboxing than boxing. But I was doing a bit of both. My mum, though, would get panic attacks when I would talk to her about potentially competing. She was so afraid. She knew somebody who was a fighter. My dad also had, my dad was a painter and decorator, and he painted the house of Michael Watson. So what they really got on, they were sort of friends, you could say, not they weren't close. My dad's English isn't great at all, so he was never going to become really close with someone because of the language barrier. But they really respected each other. They enjoyed each other's company and that sort of thing. And my dad had a real soft spot for him. Michael Watson used to give him T-shirts and stuff. He used to have these Watson T-shirts. So when what happened to Michael Watson happened to him, it was, I remember my dad was just so down about it. And my mum became petrified of the fact that, I was practicing this sport as well. So I was never going to be allowed, so to speak, as a youngster to pursue it. So in the end, they started pushing me more towards football. And when I was about 16 years old, I had to really decide which of the two am I going to try and sort of do something in. And I ended up going more down the football route. Unfortunately, I didn't make it as a footballer. But that was how I sort of got into kickboxing and boxing and martial arts. And in terms of the analytical side of it, I've just always been a very analytical person. I like to look deeper into things. I don't just want to hear, oh yeah, he should have boxed on the back foot. Okay, well then why didn't he? What happened? What led to him not being able to? Oh, he gets hit with a lot of left hooks. Okay, why does he get hit with a lot of left hooks? I like to sort of break down things and get to the detail of it in all aspects of life, not just boxing. I think, you can't just trust any authority just blindly. You have to be able to, but you shouldn't also form an opinion without really looking at evidence. So you shouldn't distrust for no reason either. And I think I've got that mindset in general in life. So I like to sort of break things down, analyze them, and just apply that sort of mindset to boxing, and that's basically what I do.
Well, when you were younger, what were some of the boxers you looked up to? Was it like we into Tyson, Ali, like Lewis, Nas, Eubank? What were some of the boxers that you were a fan of watching when you were growing up?
So I was one of those weird people, right, that liked both Eubank and Ben. I liked them both. I know they hated each other, but I liked them both. I think as a kid as well, Mike Tyson had this aura about him. My dad loved Mike Tyson as a fighter. I can't really say that I had sort of idols when I was a really little kid. Boxing back then was on Sky. We weren't exactly well off, and we lived in a council flat too, and you weren't allowed to have a dish up, so it was too high up, so it was dangerous. So we couldn't have Sky, so I couldn't really watch as much boxing. But my grandfather owned a social club, and he would take me sometimes when I'd go and stay around. He'd wake me up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever it was, and we'd drive down to the social club. And then I'd be allowed on special occasions to stay up and watch fights, Tyson Holyfield and stuff like that. I think when I really first got into boxing, though, away from just practicing, as a fan, to become more obsessive about it, was around the time of Miguel Cotto fighting Paulie Malignaggi.
Okay.
And I saw this documentary about Paul. Yeah, and I saw this documentary about Paulie Malignaggi's life, and I felt I don't want to. I can't use the word sorry for him, but I felt like it's hard to explain. He had a tough life with his father, with the way he grew up, and I ended up really wanting him to win. I remember rooting for this kid, Paulie. A lot of people were at the time were sort of, I don't know, I don't want to use the word cussing him, but they were mocking him. This kid who's like with this spiky hair, he wants to fight Cotto, and he had this tough life. And a lot of people, for instance, don't know that the first 3 of 4 fights that Paulie had, he won by knockout, and he ended up breaking his hand, and then he ended up breaking the same hand again, and they ended up putting pins in his right hand, so the guy had no right hand. And so everyone says, "Oh, he's got no power. He's got no power." That may be because of the damage he had to his hand. So then you see this kid adapt. And like I said, I'm very much into the technical element. So I love watching the likes of Bernard Hopkins or guys that aren't necessarily that powerful or that fast or that, they might be okay athletes, but they're not relying on their athleticism. And yet they're able to become world champions. To me, that shows the ability to be a great chess player. And so I'm looking at this kid, Paulie, and how he's adapted and how he's learned the art of the game to be able to grow and become this champion despite these setbacks. And I remember thinking, you know what? I love this sport even more than ever now. I want to learn more about these guys. And to this day, I'm the sort of person who is fascinated by the technical and tactical elements of a sport. Yeah, I enjoy a big puncher like anybody else, right? But if you're born with power and you just walk in and you're blowing everyone away, or you're really, really fast, like amazingly fast, yeah, okay, you were born with that. That's your genetics. Whereas these fighters that aren't fast, or they're not strong, they're not powerful punchers, and they're still able to compete, I want to know how they do it. And that's, I think, what makes me think, that's what interests me, that's what captures me, the scientific
that's one of the reasons why I'm so fascinated with Mayweather, because Mayweather, I think had issues with his hand as he got older, hence why he became more of a defensive fighter when he became, Money Mayweather instead of Pretty Boy, because Pretty Boy was more athletic, very fast and powerful, more of a knockout. But when he got older, had issues with his hand, he adapted his style, became more defensive, which helped him, become undefeated, help his legacy and became a more complete fighter.
And you know what the other thing is about Mayweather that's amazing, right? He's got a freakishly long reach, 72-inch reach, right? And he would use that very, very well. And so a lot of guys couldn't get close to him. Now, that's a physical element, kind of like speed or power or whatever. But there's a flip side to that coin. When you've got these long levers like that, when someone gets on the inside, because you can't retract your arms and shoot them off in a short way, it's a disadvantage when you're up close. Floyd managed to adapt to become a top-level inside fighter. Yeah, right. Definitely. So this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. You've given a great example there of a guy who, as he got older, had hand problems. He wasn't a massive puncher. Yes, he was fast. He fought faster guys. Yes, he had a freakishly long reach. But even when you took that away from him and you got on the inside against him, he knew how to handle himself there. And these are the things that fascinate me. These are the things. So don't get me wrong, I love watching Muhammad Ali. What a beautiful fighter, gets on his toes, dances around the ring. The fluidity is beautiful. Manny Pacquiao, the speed, the explosiveness, beautiful. But they're born with certain attributes that if you try to learn their style and you try to teach it to someone else who doesn't have their physical attributes, they're not going to be successful. Whereas the sort of guys that could be world champions without having those physical attributes, that's knowledge of the sport. The Bernard Hopkins, the Floyd Mayweathers, that is what really fascinates me more.
Yeah, definitely. I James Toney as well. So as you know, from the history of boxing, you notice that the fighters who tend to last long tend to be the more defensive, technically sound fighters, like your Mayweathers, your Hopkins, your James Toneys. Whereas fighters like Roy Jones, who was extremely athletic, unfortunately, when he got older, when athletic and was lost, his youth, his reflexes, then he career just, collapsed.
Exactly.
Hey,
you know what? Yeah,
a young man's fighter.
Exactly. And you know what? I can see you're wearing a Man United top there, so you're a football fan.
Yes.
This applies to all sports, right? It applies to all sports. Look at somebody like Andrea Pirlo, or, these sorts of guys, Xabi Alonso. They could play till they're quite old because they're able to control the tempo. They're not relying on athleticism. Whereas if you were to look at some brilliant athletes like say like Obafemi Martins was a great striker, frightening to play against when he was young. But when he lost that pace quite early, he then declined quickly. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, pace, everyone talks about pace and power, athleticism, Great attribute. Who doesn't want to see, a footballer pick up the ball from the halfway line, knock it 15 yards and burn the whole defense? It's brilliant to watch. But the ones that have that longevity are the ones that can adapt even without that. And that's what fascinates me, the little tricks they learn. Do you see what I'm saying? So it applies to all sports. I agree with you. You look at tennis even. The best the best players are often defensive players. To win a point against Djokovic, you've got to work so hard to move him around, and he's going to make you play that extra shot time and time again. Whereas a big server, say, who can smash it at 140 mile an hour serve, yeah, okay, that's great when he's on top. But when he's not on top, when he's not the one serving, he's a lot easier to deal with. And so again, whichever sport you look at, I'm always someone who's interested in that, the intellectual and the technical, as well as the physical, not just the physical.
What do you say? Do you have a GOAT list? Would you say Mayweather's the greatest of all time? Would you say Ali? Would you say Lennon, Robinson? Do you have like a top 5 greatest fighters of all time? Are you the person that said you can't? There's no GOAT because it all depends on eras, and every era is different.
Yeah, do you know what? I find it so hard to answer these questions because everyone is so different. It also depends on the era they were in. So I'll give you an example. Rocky Marciano was a great heavyweight. There's no doubt about it. But if you were to clone Rocky Marciano and you were to put him in a ring today, you're talking about a guy who's 5'10". The men today are so much bigger.
Yeah, 6'5" minimum. Heavyweight, really 6'4", 6'5".
Right, and he would be, look, you can get 6'2" heavyweights like Povetkin and stuff, but they're small heavyweights. They would be, Usyk,
cruiserweight now. Marcel, we've seen a cruiserweight nowadays. We've seen a cruiserweight, maybe a light heavyweight.
Yeah. Exactly, and you look at someone like Usyk, say, who's 6'3". A lot of people say he's a small heavyweight. Well, George Foreman, whose nickname was Big George Foreman, he was 6'3", right? So when you look at a lot of these guys today, Rocky Marciano, if you were to clone him today with the modern day training techniques, he could probably make light heavyweight. He would definitely be a cruiserweight. Now, if you were to put him in with a 6'6", 18-stone guy who might not be a top, he might not be the very best today, but he's up there, he's good, he's strong. Say someone like Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte's a good top 10 heavyweight. At the moment, he's not elite. Rocky Marciano is probably too small. That doesn't make Dillian Whyte greater than Marciano. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So it depends on how you do it. If you were to clone all the heavyweights, the best heavyweights of all time, you were to clone them at their best and you put them all in a tournament, if I had to bet on the one guy to win the most fights, I think, and I don't say this with any great deal of confidence, but I think I would lean towards Lennox Lewis. Now, if that means he's the best ever, then fair enough. It depends on what your definition is. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas what makes Muhammad Ali so great is that he was able to overcome so many obstacles, even when he was past his best, to beat other legendary fighters. And that's what makes him amazing.
Interesting point, Lennox Lewis. I had a debate with a friend of mine. Call me crazy, but I think Tyson Fury potentially beat Lennox Lewis in his prime. Tyson Fury fascinates me for a big guy who's extremely fast, for a guy his size, and his reflex ability to recover from punishment. Arguably, I think Tyson Fury maybe could be a top 3, top 5 heavyweight of all time. I think Tyson Fury could even in the era of the Ali's type, your Ali's and your Foremans and your Frasers, I think Fury could compete in any era of heavyweights.
So in terms of cloning them, like I said, I don't disagree with you. You're right. He's in the conversation. I think he's there. Lennox is there. I think Vitaly's there. I think there are a lot of fighters who, potentially Fury would be the best. I don't think he can be the greatest yet. He's got to beat the top guys in his era. But in terms of the best, Now, the thing is with Tyson Fury, I think that the types of fighters that give him the most problems are the smaller, faster fighters that can go from outside to inside quickly and land big shots. The raiding fighters. A guy like Lewis isn't necessarily like that. So stylistically, you're right. He could cause Lewis major problems. I'm not saying he necessarily wins. That's a great fight. But I don't believe there's any heavyweight who would be undefeated. If you put all the best in the league and they all fought each other, I think they'd all lose to someone, right? But if you're looking at Lewis, I agree that of the guys he could fight, Fury's one of the ones who could potentially give him the most problems. I agree with that. They're great fighters, man. They are. And they're just different eras.
would you say Anthony Joshua could have competed in other areas? Because some people say Joshua is good only for this area because this area is always better. He's not as strong as other areas. Would you say that? Would you say AJ is one of those heavyweights that could have been champion in the golden era of heavyweights?
I do think he'd been up there. I think he's a great fighter for any era. I think people exaggerate. Do you know what it is with Anthony Joshua? He got overrated initially. You had people like Barry Hearn saying he's the best ever, he's better than Ali. And so a lot of people had enough of the hype and they started to turn against him. The reality is he's lost to Andy Ruiz and he avenged it. Well, Lennox Lewis lost a couple of fights to Rackman and Oliver McCall and he avenged them. You know, these things happen. You get shocks that happen. And he's only then lost to one very special boxer in Alexander Usyk. And we don't yet know if he's going to avenge it. The guy's got one defeat and he's a unified heavyweight champ, was a unified heavyweight champ. He was an Olympic gold medalist. He's a big, heavy-handed guy that can box a little bit too.
Yeah, he beat Johnson amateurs. So he can beat the big guys. His experience with beating the big guys as amateurs. So he can definitely, beat a big guy.
Exactly. And he's a great fighter, man. And, a lot of people like to, you know what it is? You know what makes me laugh, Yemi? You will get fans of a certain fighter. For instance, Tyson Fury. We'll use Fury, but this happens with all fighters and all fans, but we'll use him as an example for this discussion. You will get someone like Tyson Fury who people will say, his fans will say he's great. He's one of the best of all time. But then they undermine the guys that are around today. If Deontay Wilder's not that good, if Anthony Joshua is not that good, if these guys aren't that good, then Vladimir Klitschko is not that good. How can him beating them mean that he's a great fighter? He just beat guys that weren't that good, right? So, and I know he's not fought AJ yet. I'm just giving you the example of if you're the king of this era and the others are not that good, then why does that make you a great fighter?
Yeah, so
people, it's almost like they don't think it through. Yeah, the truth is it's a stacked division. We're very lucky in that we've got some brilliant fighters. And I believe that there's a number of them, to be honest with you, that would have been competitive in any era. I think Wilder is another one who, he's got some technical deficiencies, but so have other great fighters that have passed. George Foreman had some technical deficiencies. Fact of the matter is, Deontay Wilder is a massive heavyweight who delivers his power long. So coming through that right hand is dangerous. He's got a great chin, great heart, and he can touch you and put you to sleep for 3 days. That's a serious guy. Then you've got Alexander Usyk, who's a brilliant boxer with a very unique skill set. He's not
very high at boxing IQ. Extremely high IQ as well as a boxer.
Yeah, very high. And in historic terms, he's not a small heavyweight like people make out. Like, Joe Frazier was like 5'9" or something. Usyk's 6'3". This idea that, he's some small guy, that's not true. So, we're lucky in this era, and you've got a lot of guys on the peripheries right now as well. We don't know how these guys are going to develop. You've got guys like Joyce and Hergovich. We don't know yet Dillian White.
One. Is it Jared Anderson? To be quite
Jared Anderson, another potential superstar of the future. Daniel Dubois, still a very young guy. Don't sleep on Dubois because he had that one loss in a nip and tuck fight where he ended up not being able to carry on. He fought an Olympic silver medalist who's still undefeated in a nip and tuck fight. And Joyce is very similar to George Foreman if you're talking about stylistically. So again, a lot of people don't realize how stacked this division is. You've got a lot of Eastern Europeans, people like Arslanbek, Makhmudov, who's a beast. We'll see how he plays out. Jalalov, who was a standout amateur, another beast. We'll see how it plays out with him. So there's a lot of talent around, man, and people need to start appreciating the depth that we've got in the modern day instead of always trying to mug it off like, oh yeah, fighters of the past were superior. This is just silly. We've got great fighters around today.
I do think that boxing fans should give more credit to Klitschko brothers. Even though they fought in the very weak area of heavyweights, I do think they're definitely time going. I definitely think Vitaly could have competed in any area of heavyweights as well. Vitaly, especially Vitaly.
I agree. I think they both would have. I think they both would have. With Vlad, I do think there is potentially an issue there with his heart. And listen, he's a great heavyweight by any era and any standard. I think he's got the talent to be. But I do think against other big heavyweights that would have put it on him, if he'd hit a crisis, sometimes I question how he would have coped against some of the biggest and the best. If George Foreman had him in serious trouble, if Mike Tyson had him in serious trouble, does he bite down on that gum shield and come through it? Lennox Lewis, I'm not so sure. Whereas Vitaly is right there. I agree. Vitaly is there.
Yeah, definitely. What in terms of boxing now and boxing nowadays, my issue is, as you know, I think especially in the American boxing market, I think it seems every boxing nowadays is prioritizing be undefeated and trying to fight less, trying to be next Mayweather. Everybody's trying to have that Mayweather career. I fight, weak opposition for the most money, be undefeated, have 20-0 record, and hopefully I'll become the next Mayweather. Do you think Mayweather's legacy is ham sport, especially the American boxing market, the whole PBC? No one wants to fight any risky fight unless it's purely in-house for the most money. What do you think? How do you think Mayweather's changed boxing? Do you think he's doing it for the worse or the better? I call Mayweather a curse.
It's difficult to say because he's brought more money into the sport. He's an all-time great fighter. There's no doubt about it. But this idea of emphasizing the zero, the undefeated, is damaging to the sport. But a lot of that is not to do with Floyd. Floyd's job is to make out like he's unbeatable to build up his fights. That's what all fighters do. I can't be beat. I can't be touched. This was he used to say that. I can't be beat. Roy Jones used to say, I can't be touched. They all do the same thing. Really, who's at fault here is the fans. That's who's at fault. We're the ones who will write off a guy for losing a fight. Just a minute ago, I had to justify why I mentioned the guy Daniel Dubois, because I know some of your listeners might listen in and think, what? Dubois lost to Joyce. How can he be a great future prospect?
No heart. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. He's a quitter. He's got no heart. He's this, he's that. People like to sleep on guys once they've lost the fight. They write them off, right? Josh Taylor recently, in a fight I felt he lost. This guy was a pound for pound top 10 fighter. All of a sudden, ESPN took him off their list. What are you talking about? Like, he's still up there. What, just because he had one contentious fight, all of a sudden people are ready to write him off? Because boxing's like that, it's going to make boxers who are reliant on fighting for their money, for their income, they're going to think, why am I going to go and risk losing my livelihood when I can just sit there and big up some guy who's not a great fighter if I know I'm going to make millions from it? Until fans start saying, yeah, listen, nobody's unbeatable. Even Floyd, right? Floyd fought guys at the right time. Great fighter, but he fought guys at the right time. There were a lot of guys that may have been all wrong for Floyd at a certain given time, and he knew when to take what risks. Don't fall. And Floyd arguably lost that first Castillo fight. Yeah, so definitely. People can't assume that there's no one ever that could have beaten Floyd. There are guys out there that would have. Tommy Hearns, stylistically, in my opinion, was all wrong for Floyd. If they were around in the same era.
Sugar Lennon as well. Sugar Lennon could have beaten Floyd as well.
Yeah, he could have potentially done, for sure. I could see how he does that. I can also see a method in which Floyd wins that. I think that's a great fight. I've got no problem with saying Leonard wins that. That's a great fight. That could have gone either way. But Hearns, I would be stunned if Floyd beat him, just based on styles. Not that Hearns is better than Leonard or anything, just stylistically. He had an even longer reach than Floyd. He would have had to have come forward, and Floyd wasn't really, although he was a great boxer at range and mid-range, even when he was a young money Mayweather, he wasn't really a guy that would hunt you and chase down an opponent and slip shots to bypass those powerful long levers that are coming at him. That's not really Floyd. So stylistically, I think Hearns would have been wrong for him. That doesn't mean that makes Floyd any less of a fighter. Do you see what I mean? So this idea that if you lose, he's been exposed, he's been exposed. That's a fan mentality that has to change. It's damaging to the sport.
Yeah, because UFC, pretty much all the great fighters lost multiple times, but the UFC fans have backed them to the full. That's why you keep getting all these competitive fights in UFC. Could boxing ever become like UFC, where there's one big division, one big promotion, or if there's too many networks, too many promoters to allow that thing to happen?
To be honest with you, look, the UFC is one promotional company. MMA is a lot bigger than just the UFC. Like in Japan, they've got a massive mixed martial arts scene as well. And a lot of them are paid more than some of the top fighters in the UFC.
Really?
Now, what tends to happen is that I was watching a show that it was actually an interview that had William Alinarji in it, and he was discussing this, and he was talking about the difference in pay. And although I think the UFC fighters earn really well across the board, some of the top Japanese fighters in MMA industry were earning more. Now, what tends to happen is that talent will follow the money. So the UFC isn't the only MMA promotional company, even in the Western world. You've got like Bellator, for instance. Yeah, so what's happened is, imagine DAZN. Sorry?
Yeah, Strikeforce as well. Strikeforce.
Yeah. And so it's like, imagine DAZN becomes by far the best promotional company with the best stable, for argument's sake. Okay, that's all well and good. That's great. But it doesn't mean that everyone at DAZN, whoever is the king at DAZN, is necessarily the king of all the other promotional companies. You could have a star fighter who's in another promotional company. So I don't really ever want to see a situation like the UFC in boxing. What I want to see is these different promotional companies stop using the excuse of you have to cross the street. No, the fans again have a point in that, have a part to play in that. It's the fans that have to demand. Listen, for instance, the PBC, the whole thing with Spence and Crawford, the PBC saying Crawford needs to cross the street. PBC fans, Spence fans need to come out and say, listen, I think Spence is the best. I think he knocks out Crawford. I've got no problem with people saying, I think he knocks out Crawford. But you've got to say, stop crossing the street. I don't care whether it's on the PBC or on any other network. I want to see this fight. And when enough fans start doing that, same with the Crawford fans. Yeah, I think Crawford beats Spence. I think he's the best in the division, but I don't know for sure because he's not fought Spence. So you've got to hurry up and fight Spence. Enough of this demanding 60-40, 50-50, split on platforms. Let's see it. When fans start doing that, we get to see the best fights. Instead, we're seeing a lot of fans that have started to affiliate themselves with specific networks. And you even see jokes like, oh, he supports Matchroom FC, like it's a football club. That has to stop. If that stops and we can see the best fight the best, and I don't really need to see it come like the UFC. You know, having a fight marinate over a period of time, there's nothing wrong with that. You just don't want it to go over the top and marinate for so long that it ends up spoiling. You see what I'm saying?
I agree with some criticism. People, I guess you heard this a million times, like boxing's dying, UFC is a new thing in town, UFC is now the #1 combat sport in the world. Do you think boxing will ever die or become is there a time when where UFC is so dominant that boxing is on decline, or boxing here to stay and it needs time to regrow? Because I think boxing was bigger in the 90s where you had Tyson, Lewis as a whole. I think boxing was bigger in the old days. We had more competitive fights and had bigger stars.
So boxing, if you not under the Queensberry rules, but as a martial art, dates back to ancient Greece even. It was in the Olympic Games. Blatantly dates back to before that in other areas of the world. MMA, UFC, the most champions that have been produced in the UFC have had a martial art background of wrestling. Now, wrestling is Greco-Roman wrestling. It's a Greek martial art, which goes again back to ancient Greece. These things don't die. You're talking about centuries and centuries. Now, the rules were different. In ancient Greece, for instance, they used to have these leather hand wraps that would be encrusted.
Spare me, Chris. 1 minute. Oh. Tell Dad I'm busy with YouTube. I'll come and get the food. I'm back now. You were saying, sorry, Chris, you were saying? Hello, Chris, can you hear me?
No problem.
Yeah.
So in ancient Greece, yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. I can hear you
fine.
I can hear you. Yeah, I'll go.
Hello? Okay. So, okay. So in ancient Greece, for instance, you would have the rules that would be a bit different. You know, in boxing, they would wrap their hands with these leather straps, and those leather straps would have stones and sand encrusted into them. So it would be a brutal sport where people would die. It was madness. It's like hitting people with knuckle dusters in a bare knuckle fight with leather straps. Crazy. But the point is, the idea of hand-to-hand combat will never die. People will always be drawn to that. Unfortunately, it's just can you hear me?
I hear you. Your screen is a bit crashed. Your screen just crashed a bit.
Okay, shall I start this bit again and you can edit this bit out and I could...
Sure.
Yeah? Okay, let me know when it's fixed.
Okay.
Can you... I'll just keep talking and let me know when my screen's sorted. Is it working at all or is it still the same?
Yeah, it's working now.
Okay, so am I right now? Shall I carry on?
Yeah, carry on.
Okay, so martial arts, a lot of these martial arts, take boxing for instance, it dates back to ancient Greece and probably even beyond that and places before that, eras before that. But basically boxing and even the idea of mixed martial arts dates back to the ancient Greeks and the Olympic Games. In MMA, for instance, in the UFC has produced multiple world champions, but the martial art that has produced the most world champions is Greco-Roman wrestling, which is a Greek martial art, wrestling. And so this idea of either one of these arts dying out is just not going to happen. It's been around for far too long. And so yes, things were different. They weren't Queensberry rules. In boxing, you would have the fighters that would wrap their hands in these leather straps, and those straps would have been crusted with stones, precious stones sometimes, and sand and broken glass. So it was devastating when you're hitting somebody. People would die. It would be like wearing sharp knuckle dusters, right? So it's not the sport at all. It was brutal. But the root of it is the same. The fact of the matter is hand-to-hand combat is going to appeal to an awful lot of people. And so, yeah, for me, I just feel that boxing is always going to be around. It may become more and less popular in different nations and stuff like that. But yeah, I can't see it dying down anytime soon.
Okay. Can boxing survive? Because I know I think the reason why boxing wasn't as big in the 90s, in the early 2000s, as it was the 90s, because of the heavyweight division being weak, being done by the Klitschko's. Can boxing survive? You mean boxing can only survive as far as the mainstream level goes if there's heavyweight, if it's a competitive heavyweight division? Because they also boxing is always, people care about the big guys, the heavyweights.
Yeah, you know what? I personally think that for me, it's not necessarily about how competitive it is, but how much you sell it to the public. You look at someone like Derek Chisora, say, the public love watching him because he's a great character and he's a great fighter to watch. Even if he's going to take on guys where you might not think he's got much of a chance of winning. If we found out tomorrow that Derek Chisora is going to fight Deontay Wilder, I think the majority of us will feel that it's not a good fight for Chisora. But Chisora's got so much heart and he's going to bring it that it's going to be a great fight while it lasts. And so sometimes it's about buying into the character and the personality. And in the 90s, the early 2000s, as great as they were as fighters, the Klitschko's didn't have a personality, certainly not to translate to a Western audience that some of their predecessors had. And I think that's what struggled to sell it. Whereas now, you've got Anthony Joshua, you've got Tyson Fury, you've got characters. Deontay Wilder is a character, they're characters. And when you're able to sell characters and people buy into them, and that's what can make boxing really successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, see, in terms of boxing sport, you don't think it's about the heavyweights per se, it's about having the characters, that have mainstream appeal that makes the sport interesting. Not about necessarily, because a lot of people say it's all about the heavyweights. A lot of people come to see the big guys clash. People don't care about the small guys so much. People always care about the heavyweights. Boxing is always about being at the heavyweights.
I don't think I agree with that, to be honest with you, because Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao are international superstars. And even beyond them, when you look past them, there's still a lot of guys that, middleweights over the years, middleweight stars, Canelo Alvarez, Golovkin. Before them, you had the likes of Marvin Hagler. In this country, we spoke already about Eubank and Ben. They caught the imagination. These guys weren't heavyweights. To me, it's more about the characters. It's about what you can sell to the public. Groves and Froch and Groves and DeGale, these caught the imagination. None of these guys were heavyweights. I genuinely believe it's about buying into the story. Can you sell me the idea of this fight? And when promoters get it right and boxing gets it right, it captures the imagination of a whole nation. And I think that's the key, to find ways to relate fighters to the fans.
Okay, that's a good point. In terms of boxing now, what's your view on the zone? Can the zone survive? Or does the zone need because a lot of people say the zone, Eddie Hearn, the zone is only going to last so many years before they go bust, because the zone not big. Boxing itself not big enough marketing to make that type of money for the zone to work. You need to have other sport like maybe football or UFC, etc. What's your opinion about the zone and the future of boxing in the media in terms of an app, or do you reckon you need to be on TV for it to, for a promoter to make money really?
It's hard to say, because the future does seem to be moving towards online. I'm a sort of person who still prefers to watch TV. I mean, take yesterday, for instance. On 3 occasions, the app, for whatever reason, had an issue during the fight, right? And I had to reload it. And so I ended up missing, it was only something like 10, 15 seconds on each of the 3 occasions. But it just wasn't as consistent as a TV channel. That's going to be something that they're going to have to address. The other thing, apart from that, is the promotional aspect of it. The reason they said that they got themselves an app rather than TV is so they could keep their costs down and charge fans less. The problem you have with that, though, is then the promotional aspect. You look at someone like Sky, they've captured the football, and by capturing the football, they're able to promote their fights throughout every football match, beginning of a game, halftime, full time, and they're ready to jump onto the bandwagon of football. Now, the Zone tried to get the Premier League rights and they didn't manage it. That was a big blow for the Zone. So now I'm not sure what they're going to do about it. For me, they needed football, but I'm not au fait with the ins and outs of the business element of it. And, listen, I'm hoping it works. Of course I am. We want to get as many options as possible as boxing fans. We want to see fights, as many of them as possible. So, of course, I want the Zone to be a big success. Whether they can do it or not, I really couldn't tell you in terms of the financial element.
Yeah, because I think the reason why Netflix works and Amazon works is because Hollywood is a billion-dollar industry. Everybody watches movies. I do, you do, your mum. Everybody watches movies. Whereas boxing is still a niche sport. It's very, very small market.
Yeah, but
boxing.
I think also beyond that, though, you could watch a movie 5 years after it was made and you still enjoy it. Maybe you've never seen it before. Maybe you've seen it 5 times. You still enjoy it. Yeah. That can happen with boxing as well. But with sport, the beauty of it is the shock factor, the awe factor. And that works when it's live. Now, it not being live is quality because the ability to get it when it's not live is quality because, let's say you got a 4 o'clock fight in Las Vegas and you're working the next day. You're working the next day. You've got to be up early. You can avoid the result. Come home, watch it like you haven't seen it before. That's something that Catch Up also offers on the TV though. How many people are going to go back and watch a 2-year-old fight? It works differently. Sport with movies or TV shows. Sport really has to be live. Now it can work brilliantly, like I said, if the live element works too. If they get the live element right, then there's no reason. Yeah. So listen, they're gonna have to address it. I'm sure that they've got some great minds working behind this. They've pumped a lot of money into it, and it looks like they're willing to pump a lot more into it. It'll be interesting to see how they go. Like I said, I hope it's a roaring success. And fans that don't want it to be a success, I don't think want to be boxing fans, to be honest. They're affiliated with specific networks, and they want those networks to do well. I'm not one of those people. I couldn't care less. I'm not team DAZN. I'm not team PBC. I'm not team any of them. What I am is team boxing. I want to see the best fight the best.
Absolutely. Do you think Eddie Head was a mistake saying pay-per-view was dead all those years ago? Because now Canel's fighting Bivol for pay-per-view. That pay-per-view market, I definitely knew wasn't going away. That especially when they make the big money, you have to charge your audience pay-per-view buys to make that money, especially for the big fights.
Well, look, I think the error that they've made is not being able to explain it well enough. Ultimately, pay-per-view as a run-of-the-mill model is not sustainable. It's just not, because people pay far too much money. Disposable income is going to keep coming down as the world's economy gets more and more messed up. People can't afford necessarily to be paying £20 for a fight, let alone what is paid in the United States. It adds up. People have got other costs. So doing it week in, week out, when you're already, month in, month out, say, when you're already paying a subscription, it's difficult for a lot of people. A lot of people dismiss it, but maybe those people don't have the financial difficulties that other, people have that have families or whatever. If you want it to be a long-term sustainable thing, then one of the key things you have to do is to bring in the right level of advertising. Now, to bring in advertising, you need bums on seats for it to pay off. Or to get bums on seats, you need it to be on terrestrial television. So again, I'm not sure how they find the right balance. Where they've made an error, though, in my opinion, DAZN, is that I'm not sure which fight it is, but there's a fight coming up in the United States, which is pay-per-view. And it's something like $20 a month, I think, for the subscription of DAZN in the United States. And let's say it's $80 for the pay-per-view. For a DAZN subscriber, it's $60. Well, that's not giving you a discount. That's your $20 subscription, and then your $60. It equates to $80. It might be the Canelo Bivol fight. Yeah. That's wrong. What they should have done is said, right, we're going to give it to the existing customers for $40. What that then does is it makes all the others who are thinking about a subscription to take it. What's the point of me giving $80 for this one fight? Let me go and give $80 and get 2 months worth of DAZN. And if you can capture fans like that, then maybe that's a way to go, to offer a carrot to fans, a reward to fans that are willing to subscribe, and then to treat them well once they have subscribed. Make sure you've got your loyal fan base coming back and not wanting to get rid of their subscriptions when there's a quiet month or whatever in the calendar. But listen, it's a difficult task for them. I think they're going to have to find a way to improve their advertising on
Because in my
TV. I know
opinion,
they want to cut their costs down.
would you say in your opinion, was Box Nation a success? In your opinion, was that a failure? Box Nation all those years ago, because Frank tried to do something similar when they Sky, it's a boxing channel.
I mean, look, I loved Box Nation. I loved it. And it was doing very well, it seems, until BT bought them out. So I would suspect that it was a success for them to be bought out, right? Okay. So it definitely worked with Box Nation. It definitely worked. The difference is Box Nation, again, was a channel. It was also available online. I think when it's only available online as an app, it becomes a little bit different. It's harder, again, to promote. But even Box Nation, look, there weren't many costs for Box Nation themselves, as far as I'm aware. Box Nation were renting fights from the United States. DAZN, with Eddie Hearn there and stuff, they're seeking as a network often to fund the fight. They're trying to make the fight. So their costs are higher than what would have been the case of Box Nation. So they need a bigger return. So I don't think it's quite a like for like sort of comparison. But again, listen, I'm speculating here. I don't know the ins and outs of the business sort of elements here.
Because Box Nation, not Box Nation, sorry, DAZN, the pound over $1 billion in debt before the guy, the founder, put like $4 billion in investing in funding, because they were like over $1 billion in debt.
I think if you're going to go down that route of really investing that much, you've got to be sure that you get the stars that you want to get. You want to get the big named fighters, and they seem to have failed in that regard on a couple of occasions. You know, DAZN have to start being able to get the biggest names and some of the biggest prospects as well. You know, losing out, say, on Keyshawn Davis, that was a big loss for them, I believe, in the United States. They've got to find a way to sign up, I think, the biggest and the best names, so that if they are going to become like the UFC, say, of boxing, they've got to create a scenario, an illusion, whereby fans think that if I want to see the best boxing, I've got to go to DAZN. Whereas right now, DAZN might possibly be the best network for watching boxing on, but the others, the networks are great too. So it's one of those scenarios whereby how can you invest that much money and there's still a debate as to who, you know, how far the gap is between the stables. Listen, it's a difficult one, man. I really, definitely. Like I said, I'm not au fait with their.
Absolutely. Speaking about big name, can you see Anthony Joshua fighting in the zone? His next fight, I reckon he's definitely a Sky fighter.
Well, because Sky is the bigger platform, it looks like it's going to be on Sky from what they're saying. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, see, these are the sorts of losses, I guess you could say, that are quite big to the zone. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out. But yeah, they could really.
Yeah, so you're saying?
No, I'm just saying they could really do with a star like an AJ, like a Tyson Fury, guys that they don't have. They've got Canelo, which is great, but even Canelo's a free agent. So, you know, they've got to find a way to sign up guys, I think. But listen, again, I'm not au fait with their business model. So I'm just speculating here.
Definitely. Well, we just hope, you know, as boxing fans, we just hope it, you know, it pulls through. We shall see. You know, it's a big gamble, and we just see what the future brings. In terms of other fights, what's your the Tyson Fury Dillian White fight? How you see that fight going? Because there's an obvious answer, but also there's a possible upset that could happen.
So there's a couple of things I want to do a bit of a film study on before I sort of commit to a prediction. But my initial thoughts are this is going to be a much harder fight than people think. I don't think that Tyson Fury maintains range as well as he used to. I think he's become heavier. Now, what I'm not sure about is whether this is what's the word I'm looking for? A conscious approach that he took against Deontay Wilder, and he's going to adapt and he's going to end up looking like he did in the first Deontay Wilder fight, or whether it's signs of aging. If it is signs of aging and he has to stand in front of White and they go to war, I could envisage ways in which both guys get hurt and both hit the canvas. So I think it's going to be a terrific fight. I really do. I'm not sleeping on White the way a lot of people are. I think Dillian White's going to have his moments in this fight. If they're both at their best, then I have to go with Tyson Fury without a doubt. But listen, it's going to be a good fight. I think they're two quality fighters.
Definitely. Are you shocked about how well it's done? Because I knew it was a big fight, but I was shocked when you said 85,000 tickets done in 3 hours. Like, wow. Because people say Tyson Fury is a name, but nowhere near AJ numbers. Like, this first time, like, Fury done AJ numbers in terms of, selling tickets at that level. Because Tyson Fury's not known selling stadiums. I think the most is done like 20,000 at MEN Arena. all those years ago. It's come back fight. So we're shocked how well this fight's done, in terms of ticket sales.
Not at all. I mean, listen, Dillian White's a pay-per-view star on his own, let alone with Tyson Fury, who's now a superstar after those Wilder fights in the United States. He's a superstar. He's been on, I don't know, Good Morning Britain or whatever it's called, daytime TV shows.
Yeah, TV shows, been WWE as well.
Yeah. So listen, man, people know Tyson Fury is a great fighter. He's a big personality. I'm not surprised at all that it managed to sell out. A lot of them have gone on StubHub. So interesting to see how they go on the resale. I think they will pretty much all be taken up. And I think there'll be a lot of pay-per-view buyers as well. It would have been even more paper buyers if Dillian White decided he wanted to play his part. And I think it was short-sighted of the promotional company of Fury, of Top Rank and Queensberry, not to give him some sort of cut for the pay-per-view. I think had he been invested in trying to promote the fight, it would have sold even more. Imagine them talking on TalkSport, for instance, of a beef that happened today between Fury and White. It's going to capture more of the general public.
Definitely, that press conference got even more. It would have probably done over 100,000 views easily on YouTube. If they had a conference together. Why was that conference? That would have done mad numbers.
Yeah, I agree.
In terms of boxing, from your analytical thinking, how do you create a boxing star? How do you get like a Chris Eubank or Nigel Benn or Naz or Ricky Hatton or Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua? What elements makes a superstar in boxing? Is it the personality? Is it fighting styles? Is it the sex appeal? What makes a star?
I think first and foremost, to become a star, you have to have charisma. Now, what that charisma can be anything. So you look at a guy like Anthony Joshua. He's very prim and proper. He's a gentleman. He acts like a statesman. Very different to Tyson Fury. Very different to Deontay Wilder. But all three of them are stars. Ricky Hatton, again, a man of the people. He would come across as a little bit of a Jack the lad from Manchester that the people would relate to and stuff like that. Very different, say, to somebody like a Floyd Mayweather. But again, with superstars. So it's not necessarily about what style you have. I think you need that charisma. And the sort of fans that like your style will then be drawn to you. But you need that charisma. Now, in terms of, you mentioned sex appeal there, a look plays a role. It does. It can play a role. But again, that's to do with charisma. Anthony Joshua is very popular, for instance, with women. I actually know a woman who doesn't like boxing, but she wants me to tell her whenever David Lemieux is fighting, right? Yeah, and David Lemieux is very popular. Yeah, David Lemieux is very popular in Canada.
I had a friend of mine who wasn't boxing either, but always wanted him when David Hay was fighting. Oh, big David Hay fan.
Yeah, exactly. David Hay, David Lemieux, Canelo Alvarez is popular with women. Who else is there? Ryan Garcia. Sorry?
Yeah, Oscar De La Hoya as well. Big ladies, man.
Oscar De La Hoya. Well, yeah, Ryan Garcia. You have this running joke with a lot of people online saying Ryan Garcia is the illegitimate son of Oscar De La Hoya. Yeah. So you have these sorts of things. They play a role. They play a role where, women will be drawn to fighters. But again, that's just one element of charisma. You could be someone that women consider to be ugly, but you are translating in a different way. It's just a way of relating. If you're able to relate to the public and they're able to love you, then you can become a star. Because you can get some really top talents that don't transcend in the same way. Andre Ward, great fighter, hasn't transcended in the way as some other superstars. Whereas you get a guy like Derek Chisora, who's nowhere near as talented as Andre Ward, and in the UK, he's a star. So, it depends really. I think charisma plays a big role and the willingness to be promoted. It's about, a lot of times it's about who pushes you as well. It does play a role.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Like, there's so many talented fighters, but for some reason they couldn't become superstars. Like Andrew Ward, Rigondo, so many others. I think he could have been a star, but I don't think it was maybe promoted correctly. Definitely, Natasha Jones as well. Definitely, there's so many boxers that they're talented, but unfortunately, you don't have the right promotion behind them.
See, it's interesting though that you mentioned Natasha Jonas, because she's one of the most popular female boxers among men that I see on my timeline. There are a lot of men that love Natasha Jonas. So going back to the idea of your look, well, she's got a look that a lot of men love, and they haven't managed to really make her into a star. Why is that? Is it because they just didn't push her hard enough? So that's what I mean about a lot of times it's about who gives you your break as well and how much willing to push you and how hard they're willing to push you. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot that goes into it, man. But yeah, you do need the ability to entertain. You do need that in the ring. There's no point in having all the other attributes, but then you're a boring fighter. People will get bored of you, you know.
Yeah. So what is speak about self-promoters? What do you think of Ebony Bridges? Do you think that's a great way to promote yourself?
Yeah, listen, Ebony Bridges is another woman who's obviously, she's a very beautiful woman, and that plays a big role in a lot of people sort of taking notice. But she's also good at playing the game. She can talk. She's quite flirty sometimes, even with fans. Now, you'd have to assume that 99% of these fans who she's a little bit flirty with, not in a cheap way, she'll just drop a, Sorry?
Yeah, most of all these straight men, of course, you find it very attractive in the eyes.
Yeah, and the thing is, like I said, most of these fans, they're not going to have like a chance with Ebony Bridges. And, but because she's approachable, she's playful, men like that, and they'll tune in. This is the reality, and she plays the game very, very well. She plays the game very, very well.
I think, what do you think of that statement, that controversial statement about, what's his name, that famous, the Gareth Davis saying Ebony Bridges, the Muhammad Ali of boxing? What do you think of that comparison? What do you think he meant by Ebony Bridges being a Muhammad Ali? Do you think in terms of promotional, marketing, where do you think that statement come from?
To be honest with you, that's the first I've heard of it, so I'm not too sure. Yeah, I guess has he been asked to explain it? I don't know. I don't think he's talking about her abilities, obviously. Maybe he's just talking about the fact that she's become the most iconic figure in modern day boxing. If you're talking about female fighting, she's the one that people know, even though she's not the best female fighter out there. You're not going to compare her to Clarissa Shields or Savannah Marshall or Katie Taylor or whoever else. She's Amanda Serrano. That's not her. But people talk about her more than anyone else. Maybe that's why. But I couldn't say. I don't know.
What do you think it would take for female boxing to become as popular as, like, say, female wrestling or female MMA? Who do you think potentially could be the Ronda Rousey of female boxing, or the China of female boxing?
Look, whatever you say, those are individual cases of very famous women in their given sports. But as a sport holistically, female WWE, or WWF as it used to be called, WWE now, is not as popular as male WWE. Female UFC and MMA, it's not as popular as male ones. Yes, you've got individual stars. Ronda Rousey was a star. Valentina Shevchenko is a wonderful fighter to watch. She's actually so talented. But she's not going to be a superstar like a Conor McGregor or a John Jones or an Adesanya, Covington, list goes on, Masvidal. She's not that. And so I've listed you a whole bunch of names there from UFC that are big names, star names, and there's a whole lot more I could list you. Whereas if we do the same with the women's game, there are fewer there. And the reality is, this may be an unpopular thing that people don't want to hear. The truth is the depth isn't there, because the vast majority of women are not necessarily willing to go down that route of wanting to fight. The reality is fighting can affect a whole bunch of things that affect your lifespan. A lot of women want to have children. It could potentially cause an injury where it could affect that.
There are to your parents, you mess up your face.
Exactly, and that plays a role in the lives of many people and many women, of course. And listen, a lot of people don't like to say that there are differences between men and women, because they almost see it as though you're almost saying women can't do what they want to do. Of course they can. They're allowed to. But by the same token, it's also remiss to say that there aren't some differences between the genders. There are. And a lot of women will not have that level of testosterone and aggression where they want to go and have a literal punch-up. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But that means you've got a smaller source pool to draw from. There are fewer women that grow up dreaming of becoming the next champion of the UFC or champion of boxing than there are young boys who dream of it. That's just the reality. So I don't think it will ever be as popular based on that. It could become more popular than it is now to reach the levels of the UFC and the levels of women's wrestling, but it's not ever going to surpass the men's games. And listen, you get it the other way around too. There are other industries whereby women are the ones that are sort of more popular or pushed more. Say modeling, for instance, doesn't matter how famous of a male model you are, you're not going to get as many as there are female superstar supermodels. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
same
if I was to tell you,
well, that pornography, that's always going to be a female-dominated business no matter what.
yeah, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of industries like that, whereby, I never thought of that one, but yeah. But yeah, so things like, so like modeling, for instance, to go back to that, if I was to tell you, name me all the female supermodels you know, and then all the male supermodels you know, you're going to be able to name a lot more female supermodels. That's just the reality. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, people are drawn to different things based on their upbringings, based on what their biological differences are. There's nothing wrong with saying that and accepting that. And yeah, that's where we're at with it. So yes, female boxing can grow, but I think it will always be behind the men's game. That's just my humble opinion.
Yeah.
I wish them all the best.
Definitely.
I wish them all the best. I want them to be successful.
Yeah, definitely. I give it to Eddie Hearn for trying his best, to promote female boxing. To try and Katie Taylor. He's done a lot for Katie Taylor. He did, Amy Bridges as well, and he's done it. I think Eddie Hearn's probably only promoted that's really backing female boxing, because I don't think Frank Warren hates it. I think Frank Warren will ever promote with boxing.
Top Rank push it. Top Rank as well, man. I think Top Rank push it quite a bit as well. You've got Maya. Who else have you got? You've got a few there, I think. A few in the American. I think Top Rank push it a little bit. But listen, look, I'm not an expert on the women's game. I'm not going to lie. One of the obstacles that women's boxing has for me, and I'm being honest, this is just an honest answer, my personal position on this. I was always raised in a way whereby I had to sort of be careful and protect the women in my family, female friends and stuff like that. As a fan, I find it a little bit hard to want to root for a woman to get knocked out. It's just not, it's not something that I can really, like, I can't sit there and get excited. Yeah, like, she's been knocked out. Like, I find it hard. So that's another obstacle for fans as well, I think. Some fans, a minority, I'm sure I'm in the minority. But yeah, it's just one of those things, I don't, not that I ever want to see men get hurt, but it's different. I think you've been around it a lot more. You almost become desensitized to it with men when you're watching them box. But with women, to me at least, it's still a little bit harder to sort of really engross myself in and root for. So listen, everyone's different. I hope they achieve the very best in their careers. I hope they all make money and achieve their dreams and things like that. And, congratulations to them for doing any of the groundbreaking stuff they've done. But I do think that male boxing is always going to be a step ahead.
I agree. It's just one of those things, it's one of the things, some things for men, some things for women. It's just, it was one of those things that was probably the same. Maybe women boxing may grow, become more popular, but it will never be as popular as men's boxing. This is how, way it is in terms of, human's mindset. You're more used to seeing a man, punching each other up rather than a woman getting knocked out. Just more used to it. So in terms of fights you're looking forward to, obviously there's Fury White, there's Serrano Taylor. What fights looking forward to this year? Is there any upcoming fight you really looking forward to? And what's your most anticipated fight?
I'm excited, like you said, about Fury White. If AJ Usyk 2 happens, I'm very excited about that. I'd love to see Sonny Edwards in there against Martinez. I'm excited about that one. I'm also, there's so many fights that I'd love to see. A lot in the heavyweight division. There's a lot of matchups that I hope get made in the heavyweight division. Bivol and Canelo, I think that's going to be a great fight to watch. Hopefully we don't get any questionable judging in that one.
Yeah,
listen, man, boxing's in a high place right now. I think there are a lot of fights out there that I really want to see.
Speaking about AJ and Usyk, and that fight unlikely happened because unfortunately with Usyk and the Ukraine situation, what do you think of AJ's potential interim fight like Otto Wallin, Joe Joyce, Luis Ortiz? What do you think would be the best fight for you to take right now to help prepare them for the Usyk rematch down the line?
In terms of preparation, definitely Wallin, because he's a southpaw who can be a little bit evasive, and that's of the ones you've mentioned and the realistic ones available, that's the best prep. In terms of what will excite me the most, it's definitely the Joe Joyce fight. Ortiz, I have no real interest in seeing. I think he's washed up. I think Martin hurt him on more than one occasion. I think he's way past his best. The Varlene fight offers some interesting stuff. I don't think that Varlene is. I think he was flattered by the Fury fight, but I think he's a good boxer. I think he's an underrated boxer, but he's also not elite. So I think it would be interesting to see how AJ deals with that. And eventually, I think AJ would come through it and stop him. But it's the one, I guess, where you could work on certain things. Whereas the one that makes you think, oh, I really wonder how this is going to go, that would be the Joyce fight for me.
Yeah, 100%. I think that'd probably be a toughest challenge as well. Definitely, because he's definitely juggernaut. He's got those stamina and he's got that chin. You know, you wonder if AJ can actually handle, you know, that constant stamina and that chin of, you know, steel. So, in terms of AJ's trainer, Angel Fernandez, is that the best trainer that AJ could have chosen, or if AJ should have gone with an American trainer, maybe one of Shields or Robert Garcia?
You know, it's difficult for me to say because Angel Fernandez doesn't have a big background that we can look into and analyze. What I will say is that Anthony Joshua went around and saw a whole bunch of trainers and he looked at them, he analyzed them, and then he said, you know what, I want to be with Angel. So maybe Angel is very special in terms of his knowledge and his training methods behind the scenes. And we don't know about it because there must be a reason that he decided, you know what, I don't want McCracken here anymore. I think I need to move on from that. But then that means that growth, that he sees it as growth, lies with Angel Fernandez. And I'm not one of these people that believes in necessarily big names. I'm not. Yes, a big name can be a great trainer, great fighter, whatever. But talent exists everywhere, even in the unknown areas, unknown regions, and you can find that talent. You can unearth it.
Yeah, when Ben Davison proved it. Ben Davison, what did with Fury? You know, he did a lot. You know,
exactly, and he's flying high at the moment, Ben Davison. And again, you see this in all sports. Jose Mourinho was an assistant and a translator for Bobby Robson. He ended up becoming one of the best managers of all time, statistically. So, you know, there have been some great trainers that never boxed in the past. Customato, for instance. So, listen, it's one of those where I'm not willing to judge. AJ's there. He sees, he knows. Whether it's the right decision or not, we're going to find out soon. Are we going to see AJ improve? Or are we going to see him decline? I don't know. Even if he was to decline, does that necessarily mean Angel Fernandez is not a great trainer? Maybe Anthony Joshua has lost his hunger. Who knows? So it's so difficult to judge. We're going to judge as time progresses and we see what Angel Fernandez does with AJ and with other fighters potentially. But for now, I'm not willing to criticize.
For me, this might sound too assumptive, but I just don't. I can't see AJ beating the best Usyk. I think Joshua can knock him out. But I just think AJ. I think he's just too clever to just adapt to whatever AJ.
But here's the thing, right? I don't agree with the idea that just because a trainer's technical, he's only training you to be able to box. You know, if Anthony Joshua learns how to box at the highest level, and he's already at the high level, Usyk's just a little bit higher than him, but he's already a high level boxer. He's going to be a boxer puncher. In other words, he's going to be looking to lure Usyk onto a big shot to knock him out. It doesn't mean that Angel Fernandez is telling him, right, AJ, we've got to learn how to win on points. No. What he's trying to do is set up or set traps to take away Usyk's best weapons in a bid to lure him in and land something big on him. You see what I'm saying? So It doesn't mean that he has to run across the ring and start chasing Usyk and throwing big haymakers and hope to catch him and knock him out. You know, I don't think someone like Ronnie Shields would tell him to do that either. So, you know, it's one of those things whereby you've got to learn as well about how to bring the best out of your opponent and take away your opponent's, bring the best out of your fighter and take away your opponent's strengths. And you can be a technical boxing coach and do that. It doesn't mean that you're only capable of doing one thing.
Definitely. So do you think AJ can beat Usyk, the best Usyk, or he has to be only prepared Usyk? I don't think AJ can beat the best Usyk. Usyk's on his ball, on his A game again. I can't see Joshua beating Usyk.
I think, look, it was close through 8 rounds, and I thought Usyk pulled away. Anthony Joshua's got the power to turn a fight around in any given moment. I think it's a very competitive fight that could go either way. I think Usyk's the favourite, so I think he's more likely to win. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if AJ did it. I do think AJ's a top-level heavyweight. So yeah, I do think he's capable of beating Usyk. He's capable. Does he beat Usyk? I don't know.
Can he only beat him by knockout?
It depends. Let's say he was through 8 rounds, the first fight was nip and tuck. It was close. Let's say he, on top of that, he managed to knock Usyk down. So let's say in the 9th round, he knocked Usyk down. Well, all of a sudden, Usyk's got to then come back. Maybe you can knock him down a couple of times and it starts to break. I mean, look, Lee Wood last night, the 2 of the judges had him 1 round down going into that 12th, and one judge had it 105, 102. Had Conlon got up from that second knockdown and survived the fight, Lee Wood would have won by majority decision. One judge would have had it a draw, and two would have had it to Lee Wood because of the two knockdowns. Now, there's no doubt that Conlon was the superior technical boxer, right? But with the knockdowns, it could have swung it in his favor. So it's not impossible for him to win it on points, but I do think for him to win it on points, he would have to hurt Usyk. I don't think he's just going to outbox him, but I don't think anybody outboxes Usyk like that. So, you know, again, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean he's limited. He's just not as good in that area as Usyk is. It's just, you know, and there's areas that Usyk's not as good as AJ. AJ's a bigger puncher. He's more destructive. So, do you see what I'm saying? So listen, man, they're great fighters. Again, hopefully we get an opportunity to see them do it again, and we'll see how it plays out. Yes, I do think Usyk's more likely to win the fight, but listen, they're great fighters. And, you know, just like in football, again, you might have the best team in Europe playing the fifth best team in Europe or the fourth best team in Europe. It doesn't guarantee that they're going to win the match. On any given night, anything can happen. And I think that's what the case is going to be like here.
Is there such thing in boxing as an upset, like Tyson, Douglas, Lewis, Ryman? Are these upsets or just people not giving the fighters, underestimating, you know, these fighters who do have maybe the best records?
It's a bit of both sometimes. It's a bit of both. With Buster Douglas, I thought that was a big upset. He was underrated as a boxer. I'm not sure he lived the lifestyle, Buster Douglas, to be able to remain at the elite level, but that was a massive upset. You do get other times, though, whereby it's not an upset per se, but it's a bit of an upset, but a guy just was being slept on. For instance, George Kambosos. Yeah. George Kambosos beating Teofimo Lopez was an upset, but Kambosos is a class fighter. Like, people were sleeping on Kambosos. There's a difference there. Shane McGuigan was talking about this, in fact, when he was talking about Catterall and Josh Taylor. And Shane McGuigan felt that Catterall just fought a basic fight. And he actually gave Kambosos as an example. And he said, this wasn't a breakout fight like Kambosos. So what Shane McGuigan was saying is Kambosos was a star and people didn't know about him. Whereas Catterall went through the basics and Josh Taylor had an off night. So if you were to ask McGuigan, he'll tell you, listen, it was poor preparation or whatever from Taylor. And it was a big upset because Catterall turned up on the night. Whereas Kambosos was genuinely an elite level lightweight and people were just sleeping on him. So I think it's a bit of both, you know. I think it depends on any given fighter and any given night.
So the Mir Khan and British Pesco, but that definitely not an upset. I could definitely say Pesco was an elite fighter.
Yeah, to me, that's an upset. To me, that's an upset. I thought that he was all wrong for Khan. Stylistically, Khan was a young man as well, don't forget. So a lot of people hold it against him. He was very young. It's not the Khan that then went on to become the Amir Khan. But he was, you know, he was a young guy, won a silver medal at the Olympics as well. So they were building him up. They put him in against a big puncher who ran across the ring, landed a big shot early that Khan never recovered from. That's an upset. I don't think Briedis Prescott was superior to Khan. He just happened to have his number on that given night. Maybe stylistically. Sorry, go on.
What was your opinion about Joshua Ruiz? The whole situation.
So Joshua Ruiz, I actually picked Ruiz when I was back. I picked Ruiz. I won a bet on it. I've stopped gambling since then for other reasons, for religious reasons. To be honest with you, I want to try and be closer to God, and I didn't want to be promoting that on my channel and stuff like that. That was just a personal choice. But back then, when I was still betting, I had a bet on Andy Ruiz because of the value. If it was 50-50, I might have lent towards Joshua if the odds were 50-50. But he was such a big underdog, Ruiz. I knew one thing. Andy Ruiz, as good as AJ is up close at mid-range, Andy Ruiz's hands are even faster. And he's got great variation with his hooking. And he does these little movements, just little movements, which can make it quite hard sometimes to be able to land on him flush. And because he's a big dude as well, big fat dude, he's hard to tie up and wrap your arms around. And so I remember thinking, if AJ makes the error of not keeping him at bay, and bear in mind, AJ came in big and heavy. This was not the AJ that fought Pulev. This is not the AJ that fought Povetkin that showed the ability to get on his toes and box on the back foot. He came in big and heavy like a bully because he was preparing for Jarrell Miller. And I remember thinking to myself, if they start exchanging at mid-range, Ruiz is going to be landing some combinations, man. So the upset's there, it's available. Ruiz is another one people can't sleep on. He fought a very close fight that he lost away in New Zealand against Joseph Parker. He's another top-level heavyweight. right? He's got very slow feet. So some of the better boxers who can keep him at range will fancy their chance of being able to do that. But if he's able to close that range on you and get close and let go of those combinations, he's a hard cat to deal with. And that's the truth.
Yeah, definitely. I think Louise, like Buster Douglas, he's definitely a top heavyweight, but just has a lazy lifestyle. Just unfortunately, I don't know have lifestyle. Doesn't have the most disciplined lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, let's see now what he does. Let's see if he can stay on track now. But hopefully he can, because he'd be a great addition to the division if he can stay focused.
Definitely. Definitely. So in terms of plans going forward in your channel, do you want to do more interviews? Do you want to interview boxers, attend events? What's your plans for your channel going forward now, Chris?
You know what? I've wanted to interview fighters. I'm going to be actually interviewing a couple of former fighters, hopefully over the next coming weeks that I've been speaking to. I'll keep that a secret until I upload it. But one of the things I worry about when it comes to interviewing active fighters is that on my channel, I take great pride in the fact that I'm neutral. I don't
unbiased.
Yeah, I always, I'll praise Tyson Fury one week. I'll criticize him the next if I feel he deserves it. The same with Anthony Joshua, Dillian White, Usyk, all of them. And because of that, if you start interviewing fighters and you develop close relationships with them, I'm worried that it might create a thing where I feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that. And listen, I'm never disrespectful to fighters. I'm not sitting here clowning them or anything like that. That's not really what my channel's about. But at the same time, I want to be able to be honest and say, you know what, I felt this guy lost this fight. I feel this guy is going to lose this fight, and so on and so forth. And a lot of boxers do get sort of sensitive about that. They get a little bit emotional. When you pick against them, a lot of them think that it's something personal. It's not. In football, no one takes it personally. You're a Man United fan. If you were to turn around and say, you know what, I actually think we're going to lose away at Bayern Munich, say, no one's going to say, oh, you're anti-United. It's just a prediction. I think we're going to lose at Bayern Munich. Whereas if you say it about a boxer, they take it personally,
I wish boxing commentary was less biased. I wish it was more like football. I wish we had our own Roy Keane, Jeremy Carragher had unbiased, boxing commentary. A lot of boxing nowadays, the commentary is very biased, all depending on the promoter.
I think football commentary can be quite biased too, though. You'll get a lot of, if they know a player, then maybe they played with him, or for instance, when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was being criticized by a lot of people, you always saw that Gary and Rio were a little bit more gentle with him because they know him and you understand they're friends. And, so I think it applies across the board, to be honest with you. I think it can happen in any sport. And this is why I've always been against fighters becoming judges for that same reason, because you're going to have connections. And that's not the right thing. It has to be impartial. So in terms of my channel, I'm going to just keep trying to do what I'm doing. I've got a couple of other ideas that I want to implement, hopefully can make the channel grow. And we'll see how it goes from there. You never know, might get spotted one day. That was the dream of all of us, isn't it? To get spotted. You look at a guy like Adi Oladipo, who's done a terrific job with the zone. He started off doing these sorts of things.
What do you do for a living? What's your full-time job? What do you do? What's your, you maybe mentioned to me work now. What's your job outside YouTube? What do you do for a living?
So a freelance consultant. I'm an analyst where I do a whole bunch of analytical stuff. I've worked for professional football clubs in the past where I've done some tactical and technical analysis, kind of like the breakdowns I do sometimes for boxing. I've done them for football coaches. I've also done more mundane sort of stats-based stuff. But it's not just for football. I've worked in local governments, a council type jobs. I worked for a property development company. It's basically freelance consulting. I go in, I analyze some problems that they might have, look at their as-is sort of process and how they can improve it and how it should be. And, it's that sort of thing, basically.
I did interview a couple of months ago with Natasha Jonas, because I thought, because you like her, you're an excellent talker, speaker, you're very analytical. So have you thought about maybe pursuing a job for Sky or the Zone, like become a full-time boxing commentator or journalist? Because I think you'd be an excellent, commentator for those big channels.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a lovely thing for you to say. I really appreciate that. Look, it would be a wonderful thing to get the opportunity to do something like that. But again, the reality is you have to catch the eye, I guess. At the end of the day,
have connections.
I'm not saying you have to necessarily have a connection. Like I said, Adi Oladipo's done a terrific job. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware of, he just built up a regular boxing channel online and he got headhunted, he got spotted. And I think he's brilliant at what he does. He's a fantastic presenter for the Zone. So sometimes they might see something they like and approach you. Who knows? That would be a dream for everybody, I think, involved in this YouTube game. We all love the sport. To be able to do it as a living would be a beautiful thing. But at the same time, there's so much competition that you have to also be realistic. So you have to try and be the best you can be. And who knows, maybe you can get a break. I would love to dip my hand in something like that, but who knows, God willing, one day something like that can happen.
What made you start your YouTube channel? How long have you been on YouTube for now?
I was on YouTube for a number of years. I wasn't taking it particularly seriously initially. I was just doing betting tips, actually. We used to do really well. We were doing it for about 3-4 years, and every single year I would basically tip different fights every week. And every year we would end up making quite a significant profit at the end of the year. And like I said, for religious purposes, I wanted to be closer to God. I didn't want to be encouraging other people to bet. I'd heard of a couple of scenarios as well where, not because of me, but just in general, people had developed some serious gambling issues. They'd lost a lot of money. And I just thought, look, everybody should have the right to do what they want. I'm not for the banning of gambling or anything like that. But for me to be pushing it and encouraging people, I just didn't feel right, So I then changed it to do more sort of boxing analysis, straight up analysis stuff. And some people really like the channel. And, Hatman Strikes Back, which is a big YouTube boxing channel. And then G-Man as well.
Is one of my favorites as well. I love boxing mixing rhymes.
Yeah, and they were just very those two in particular for me, Hatman and G-Man, were very complimentary of my channel. Hatman did a video whereby he did 2 videos whereby he said, in fact, he did 3 videos. One was a live stream where he said, Chris Andre is one of the best boxing analysts you will ever come across. Please follow his video, check out his video. And that was so flattering to me because Hatman really knows his stuff. And he's been in and around the game and coached youth, like youngsters and stuff for so many years. He knows a lot of pro fighters. So for somebody like that to have said something so complimentary, it was a wonderful thing. And the channel started to grow. And
for me, because
I'm so grateful to them.
If you have some YouTubers, I like channels like yourself, Hatman, Boxing Beat Rhymes are very logical. Because I thought a lot of YouTubers are very biased. A lot of YouTubers are very Eddie Hearn Pro, very Frank Warren, very Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury. I hate those fanboy channels. I like it when it's neutral, very open-minded. I hate those fanboy channels. That's why
the truth is
so much.
The truth is, it would be, if I really wanted to grow the channel and that was my primary aim, and it is an aim, right? It is what I want to do. But if that was my only aim, I would have done that a long time ago, where I would have affiliated myself to one fighter. Because what happens is, for instance, there was a period where I was very praising of Anthony Joshua, and he deserved that praise. And initially I was, my channel really grew quite quickly in a short space of time. And then when Eddie Hearn made an offer to Alexander Usyk, it was a lowball offer, the first offer. And I came out and I said it on my channel. Listen, this is a lowball offer. It's not right. And I lost a lot of subscribers instantly. They told me they were AJ fans and Tyson Fury, back in 2012, when nobody was really talking about Fury as a potential star, people were cussing him for uppercutting himself in the face and stuff like that. At the time, I was saying, listen,
that time, David Price meant to be the heavyweight, successful.
Right. And on my channel, I was saying Tyson Fury is going to become the guy who's going to dethrone Klitschko. He's going to become the best heavyweight in the world. By 2014, I think 2015, I was saying, before the Klitschko fight, I was saying he's got the potential to become one of the best of all time. And when I was saying these things, I was getting mocked. There's no other way to put it. People were laughing at me. They were cussing me. Like, what are you talking about, Tyson Fury? And I wanted him to do well so I could be vindicated and go back and tell people, look, you see, now you're not laughing anymore. But the point is, I built up afterwards a bit of a Fury fan base. Well, more recently, when I've been a little bit more critical of some of the things Fury's done, and like I said, I think he's an amazing fighter, but when it comes, for instance, to the offers that Dillian White's been getting, and it's not even Fury I'm criticizing, really, it's the purse split, it's the WBC. Again, I had a few people tell me, I was talking rubbish, and they unfollowed me on Twitter. They were Fury fans. So you get a lot of people that are emotionally invested, and they ignore all the good things you've ever said just because you then take a different position with their favorite fighter. But that's what I want to be here on my channel. I want to be honest. I want to be unbiased. Had I affiliated with one particular fighter, I'm sure my channel would have grown a lot more, to be honest. But then it wouldn't have what I believe, and I hope I don't come across as arrogant when I say this, but I believe it's a good quality channel. And I don't want to give up on that quality just so I can build up the viewership. Do you see what I'm saying?
Definitely. Integrity, definitely. Because there's a lot of channels, honestly, there's a lot of channels bigger than our channel, but I think a lot of channels, the bigger ones, are very biased to a certain person, whether it be a promoter or a network or a fighter. A lot of these big YouTube channels are very biased. You can tell by the way they talk. They're very critical of one fight. They always praise the one fight without any valid reasons.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, take Deontay Wilder, for instance. I lost followers, only a couple,
Or
when I said I didn't.
is it LDBC at the Lion Boxing Den?
Yeah.
Those fanboys.
Right. So I lost a couple of them fans because I didn't agree with what they were saying about Fury tampering the gloves. But then I lost a couple of anti-Wilder fans when I said he's actually a great fighter, though. He's a great fighter. He just, what he's saying is wrong, but he's a great fighter. So those people were saying to me, what are you talking about? Who's he ever fought? And I was saying, listen, forget that. Forget the CV. I'm just talking about his abilities and how dangerous he is. So the point is that whether you were pro-Wilder or anti-Wilder, I was rubbing everyone up the wrong way just because I was being honest.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But that's always what I'm going to be like. I'm going to be honest. And the truth is, the subscribers that have stuck around, I appreciate each and every one of them because they're always, they're happy to have my back. And they'll say to me, we love the channel. We love that it's unbiased. Keep doing what you're doing. And that's what I intend to do.
Definitely. Are you planning to go to any, have you been to, do you go to a lot of boxing events yourself? Do you go to Yorkshire shows or you quite active in any events?
I used to go all the time. I haven't been in a while now. The last fight I went to was Josh Taylor against Regis Prograis. But obviously with everything that happened with COVID and stuff like that, events stopped and things like that. Since they've started up again, I've not had the opportunity. I wanted to go to the Ryder Jacobs fight, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. Something came up.
What about you live in London?
Yeah. So, yeah. And so I I'd even travel for a big boxing fight. I've got no problem with that. Again, I wanted to go to the Lee Wood-Conlon fight in Nottingham, but something came up. So, yeah, it's just about finding the time at the moment. With work, it's been a bit difficult for me. I'm working at some unorthodox hours on different projects and stuff. But yeah, I definitely would love to be able to get back to some fights sooner rather than later.
Definitely. I've been to the. I think you saw my picture. I was actually at the Mir Khan Kell book fighting at the Manchester Arena. That was nice to remember. 20,000 fans.
Wow, I can imagine. Yeah, that must have been quite an atmosphere.
I'm considering going to the Tyson Fury Dillian White fight at Wembley. I'm probably maybe first week of April. I'll probably buy a ticket, but it's gonna be expensive. But I might go for it. See how it goes.
From StubHub. Listen, if you're able to afford it and you want to go down there and do it, these are the sorts of fights that you will never forget. Definitely. So it'll be worth doing it, I guess.
Definitely. Do you in your area? Is there a lot of amateur boxing clubs in your area? Or do you live near any of the amateur boxing clubs?
Yeah, I mean, listen, in London's full of amateur boxing clubs everywhere. Yeah, I mean, wherever every little town, every little borough will have one or two boxing clubs. It's a niche sport in the UK, but participation is still quite high, particularly in big metropolises like London. Yeah, so boxing's thriving at the moment. Obviously, Manchester's
amateur boxers to help grow your fan base. Because I think I might consider into some amateur boxers as well. So sorry, say that again. That last bit again. Would you consider interviewing some amateur boxers at your local boxing gym in the help grow your channels?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against the idea or anything like that. But like I said, with me, it's more a case of, well, for a start, it's about, I guess, the demand of it, what do my viewers really want to see, and also, am I going to develop relationships whereby if they turn pro, again, I'm going to have to be worried about, pleasing them, and I don't know. I mean, I've been asked. I'm not going to go too much into this in detail, but I've been asked by a former professional fighter if I'd be willing to work with a couple of youngsters, a couple of young prospects in a coaching capacity. So I've been asked if I can sort of help observe that as well, sort of performance analyst capacity as well. I've never done anything like that in terms of being sort of like an assistant trainer. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to consider it. This is a guy he was a pro fighter. He used to talk to me a lot about his own fights, and I used to do the sort of breakdowns that I do for my channel. I used to do with his opponents, and he always used to find me to be very useful. So I think he sort of offered me this opportunity. So I don't know. I might end up going down that route. I'll see. I don't know. I'll see. We'll see how life plays out.
Yeah, you never know. It looks like you're gonna have a more active role in boxing. Definitely, possibly in the future. Definitely more active role in boxing.
Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate that, brother.
Yeah, I wanted your opinion about this because I did a video way back about the difference between our fighters and American fighters. I've noticed that a lot of our American champions, like the Ricky Hattons, the Carl Foxes, Lennox Lewis's, Inaz Ahmed, tend to retire with their money intact. But a lot of the American fighters, like your Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson's, your Evander Holyfield, in to have a bigger career, they tend to end up financially in a drainage. What do you think that is?
I
Because
think
of the lifestyle, the entourages. So I know a lot of
I
our
think
fighters, I go to retire with their money intact. Well, a lot of the American fighters tend to retire broke or financially, in wounds.
yeah, listen, I think a lot of it has to do with maybe the background they've come from as well. If you come from a certain background where you're very, very poor, if you then come into a load of money, sometimes and you're young, sometimes it's hard to even know how to deal with that. You assume that it's going to keep on coming and coming and coming,
Yeah,
and you just spend and spend and spend. Mike Tyson's spoken about this in the past, and Mike Tyson came from the sort of difficult, poverty-stricken background that maybe, yes, you have some poor young fighters here too, but maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe Ricky Hatton's upbringing, for instance, might not have been quite the same as Mike Tyson's. Do you see what I'm saying? Lawrence Okolie, a great kid who's come from working a McDonald's minimum wage job. He's hardly flying in the big bucks, right? He's working at McDonald's. But again, it's a different. London has some really rough, tough areas, as does Manchester and Glasgow and various cities around the UK. But there are some areas in the hood in America, as they call it, the various projects that they've grown up in, where things are even more difficult. Yeah, and so you grow up in this environment and you get this big bundle of cash, and all of a sudden your life changes. You've gone from this kid that struggled to make ends meet to all of a sudden you've got women throwing themselves at you. You've got flash cars and flash jewelry being pushed on you. Why don't you buy this watch? And you get that watch and press is all over you, and you're showing your new bling on the camera, and all of a sudden your life's changed and you feel like you need to keep up with those appearances. Maybe that's the reason, but listen, I don't know. I really don't know, because I hope that they get some good advice, a lot of these fighters, and they invest in situations that can help.
I'll be honest with you, my heart was broken when Evander Holyfield fought that MMA guy. Is it Victor Belfort?
Yeah, man, that was horrible.
All-time great, 60-year-old man just fighting for pennies now, just because he can't pay, he can't pay the bills, child support. I don't want to see like all these old-time greats like Tommy Hearns and Evander Holyfield. They made hundreds of millions in their careers, and then they can't afford to retire. They fight past their prime. They get injuries, and I hate when you see a fight you respect so much, forced to forced to fight on just because he can't afford his lifestyle anymore, or because
I agree. I agree. It's terribly sad. Maybe promoters need to, or management companies or whoever, need to start advising them to look at financial advisors. And I don't know, man, but yeah, any young boxers out there that may be watching this, the one advice I would give you, one word of advice, is focus on the future, on the long term, no matter how good you are now, and build for a life and not just for the short term. And when you do that and you invest wisely and you're financially secure, then the good times can roll and you don't need to worry about losing it all. That's the only advice I can give them.
Speaking about, what do you think of the rise of self-promoter, like the way the Floyd did it, Oscar De La Hoya, and Canelo, these boxers who are stars haven't become their own bosses of their career? Is that something that any boxer can do? You have to be a superstar, become yourself promoter.
Yeah, I think you've got to have. Yeah, I think a lot of things need to fall into place. First, you need to become a star before you can branch out. So initially, I think most fighters need the help. They need to get somewhere. And then after that, who knows? Like I said, I'm not too au fait with the business elements of boxing in that regard. I wouldn't know how to advise somebody to self-promote and become a star. Of course, I've got my ideas about what you can do to become, a bigger star in the eyes of people, how to promote yourself in that manner. But I wouldn't have knowledge of the sort of contractual agreements and whether it's worth paying what you pay to a promoter. From the outside looking in, I would assume that you're better off going with a promoter. If you then become an international superstar and you want to build your own sort of promotional company, in the way AJ's got his own, the way Floyd Mayweather had Money Promotions and stuff, Golden Boy Promotions, then yeah, by all means. But you need to be a superstar before you get to that part.
I agree, because I think because Claudio Harrison did it back in the day. Unfortunately, he did succeed, and so did Joe Casali did his own self promotion as well after he retired. Unfortunately, so you have to be a superstar. You have to have obviously know, understand the business element before you can become your own self promoter.